Welcome to Healthy Pets, Healthy Owners. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and let's welcome today Mr. Nick Sherman. Nick, welcome to Healthy Pets, Healthy Owners.
Thank you for having me, sir.
You know, Nick is running for Washington County Commissioner, so he's out campaigning, and he took a day off of his busy schedule to stop in and tell us about what he actually does for a living and what he's involved with.
Well, I didn't take the whole day off. I took some time off today. I blocked some time to be with you today. I've researched the show. I think it's great of what you do here. I was trying to grab my dog. I have a 3-year-old, half Yorkshire Terrier, half Shih Tzu mix named Bailey. She's my best buddy. When I get home after a late night of campaigning, I think she's just the absolute best thing to come home to, because my wife and my 2 young children are sleeping, yet she's waiting up for me.
Giving you that unconditional love.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I wanted to talk to you today about what I do. I know that we talk about a bunch of different health issues on the show, and with October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, what I would like to do is talk about what I do in my day job and how I try to help the community, and some of the things that we can do as members of the community to help with domestic violence.
Absolutely. So your organization, which is the Domestic Outreach Center, which is located in Finleyville?
Our home office is in Finleyville. We service Washington County, we service Allegheny County, we service Beaver, Butler County at times, and sometimes Greene County. The further outreaching counties, if this is a defense attorney that has a need for one of his clients, we will try to facilitate that need, but our focus has been Washington and Allegheny County historically.
So are you working with the victims or the perpetrators?
That's interesting. There is so many people, when I say I work in domestic violence, they want to know, what does that mean? Because there's so much emphasis put on victim advocacy, as well there should be. Whenever you think about domestic violence and what happens in our mind, we normally go to a woman is battered, and that she needs resources, and what can we do to help her, and that needs to be our first order of business. We need to make sure that we're helping these women. I work with an Allegheny County Centers for Victim. I think they do great work. In Washington County, we work with Southwest Domestic Violence Services. They do great work. We also have the Pittsburgh Women's Center and Shelter. If you live in these areas and you're not giving money to these nonprofit organizations that are helping these women and these families that are victim of domestic violence, I think you should.
Oh, these aren't government funded, they're private.
They are. They're government funded, but they do, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but to volunteer and to give them some time, or to give them some resources, some clothes, money's always good. To help those programs is always a great thing to do. And actually this summer, I got my certification, and now, although I don't work in this realm, I am a state certified victim advocate for domestic violence. But where we differ from other programs is where everyone works with the victim of domestic violence. We looked at the holistic approach of what is domestic violence in its entirety, and we saw the void was that nobody was working with the perpetrators.
So why is that important?
Well, it's important on many levels. When you look at, in society, we are very quick to victim blame. We always say, why didn't she leave? Well, the bigger question is, why did he beat her? Or why did she beat him sometimes? And we need to change that stigma of what's happening with domestic violence. And when the question is always, why didn't she leave? We're not addressing the true issue of domestic violence, which is the perpetrator of domestic violence.
So why did that perpetrator carry out the event?
Correct.
And what's the backstory to that?
Absolutely. What's the backstory? Why did he do it? And something that is a not popular thought process, and I know I'm running for Washington County Commissioner, but if we truly want to fix and help domestic violence, we have to work with, I always say, the men, which is not accurate. We need to work with the perpetrators of the domestic violence, because they're the ones that erred. If we have a society where we say we're not going to victim blame, that's great, let's not victim blame, but then let's also treat the people that need to be treated, which is the aggressor or the perpetrator of this violence.
If that's not done, then it's just a circle of repetition of the same events.
Absolutely. This guy's going to break up with her. They're going to be a PFA. He's not allowed to have any contact with her, which is a great thing. Again, we've taken the appropriate steps to help that woman or to help that victim. But what we don't realize and what we don't think about sometimes is that person is going to go back to his local bar or his area or work or whatever, and he or she is going to find the next victim of domestic violence. And that cycle continues over and over and over again. And when you look at the psychology of abusive people, they know who to look for. They are attracted to a certain type of person that is more likely to allow an abusive relationship happen.
Does this involve elder abuse as well?
It could. The statistic that we have seen many times is that, a lot of people say this isn't an anger management issue. This is a domestic violence issue. This is a controlling issue. I agree with that wholeheartedly. We feel that it's an issue for everybody, though, because people that are more likely to abuse, a lot of the times will abuse other people as well. Domestic violence, we think of intimate partner. My husband, my wife, my this, but there's also family members, a sister, a brother, parents. We see that there is a ton of people that are abusive. When they're abusive to their spouses, they're also abusive to their parents and to their elder, especially like you said, elder parents.
Yeah. If you're not mitigating the problem, I think there's a lot of research out there that shows a lot of the serial killers started off abusing animals and just went up the ladder.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So they kind of repeat what they've learned. Do you feel that that's what happens with these situations? They've seen it as they were growing up and they just perpetrate it?
Yeah. We say at the Domestic Outreach Center, the three basic principles of the Domestic Outreach Center are accountability, accountability, and accountability. This is your fault. And man, a lot of people when they come to class first day, they don't want to hear that, because again, the way their thought process is always somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
This is my father's fault. He abused my mother, and I have this vision of what's supposed to happen in a relationship. This is my alcoholic mother. This is the way I was raised. This is my woe is me, and they don't want to take responsibility for the role that they take in their abusive behaviors. And I say, well, you don't understand. My wife's bipolar. It doesn't matter.
Hey,
well,
right.
my wife's an alcoholic. It doesn't matter. That does not give you the excuse to put your hands on her. Well, my wife put her hands on me first. That doesn't give you the excuse to put your hands on her. That's just, all these are, they're just different ways that perpetrators of violence try to blame everybody else for their behaviors.
I was in the presence of a father with his kids, and the kids weren't listening, and he says, "Don't make me smack you." Well, you have to reprimand, you have to teach, you have to do all that.
Sure.
Whether I'm not advocating either way.
Right.
But it was funny. Don't you make me hit you.
Correct.
Yeah. I looked at that and went, oh, okay, that was an interesting comment.
It really is, and that's a textbook definition of someone that we would say would need a program like ours, because it's all encompassing. And like I said, a lot of agencies, they really, really focus on this abusive, controlling behavior. They say domestic violence is not about physical violence. It's about controlling someone.
Most of the perpetrators male?
Yes. The statistic that we have is I think 80% of the people that we have in our program are male. We do
two female?
Yes. We have mostly two female. We also have a population of the LGBTQ of that community that partake in the program as well.
So you have men abusing women,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's some women abusing men.
Absolutely.
And then people in general just abusing each other.
Well, yeah, but we separate everything because we have it's a newer term. Now everyone's calling this batters intervention or a batters intervention program, a BIP program. I can remember being in Harrisburg and meeting with service industry people, and we say that batterer is not a word. Then we go back and forth on the language of this, and I guess they settled on a batters intervention program. But that's one of our programs, and that's a lot more focused on intimate partner domestic abuse. We talk about the cycle of domestic violence, how it changes, how it shrinks and expands, and a lot more emphasis put on controlling tendencies. We also do another program, which is a typical anger management class. This is the guy that, for whatever reason, decided to throw the lunch meat at the lady at Giant Eagle or whatever the scenario is.
There's a lot of stress out there.
There is.
And we all expect everything this second.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to stand in line. We don't want to wait. We don't want to be in traffic. We don't, we
Right.
don't want to be cut off, and we may be even cutting people off.
Correct.
But
What I find helps that cutting people off?
What?
If you put magnets on your car that says Nick Sherman for County Commissioner, you don't want to cut anyone off anymore because they know who you are, and you're losing votes every time you do it. You know?
For the last year, I had a van that was used for rescue. It was called ART, Animal Rescue Transport.
Right.
And of course, it had my name on it and website on it, and it was sponsored by Moon Township Ford, and it made me the kindest, best driver out on the road.
Absolutely, yeah.
But get me in one of my other cars and you cut me off. I'm a different human being.
Right,
you know?
right.
But I've even learned to control that because of that van.
It's a helpful thing. Just put your name and phone number in your car. You're very much less likely to cut people off.
Absolutely.
I joke with my father. My father drives me around in the evenings when I'm knocking on doors, and I find the best way to campaign is just to go and knock on doors and talk to people. So I have my dad driving me, and the joke is he's always in the middle of the road and everywhere else. I'm like, Dad, the signs are on the car. You know, you need to just follow these directions. So it's a running joke between me and my father. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So all of this causes our tempers to flare, and a lot of population are on some kind of anti-anxiety medication to boot. So what happens within the center that helps re-educate us and not having us repeat that?
First and foremost, there's a bunch of different things that happen there. There's evaluations that go on, and we like to see what is the problem.
So you're looking at the root cause.
We're looking at the root cause, and the root cause for domestic violence is always controlling abusive tendencies. But there's other things that exacerbate that, and drug and alcohol. I was talking to a judge. He said, "What do you do for a drug and alcohol evaluation?" I said, "We have a breathalyzer, and we tell them they can't show up under the influence of any alcohol." And I joke with them. I say, "I'm not saying you can't drink. I'm just saying the 2 nights a week that you're in this program, you have to wait till 8 o'clock at night. But to someone that truly has drug and alcohol issues, that's impossible." So when they show up and they have alcohol in their breath and we breathalyze them, we'll send it, we will. I don't want to say kick them out of the program, but we'll send a letter to the judge. We'll modify bond. I don't modify anything. The judge will modify bond, and we'll look at a drug and alcohol treatment program first.
Washington County has one of the best. I'm
Right.
actually on the board of the Drug and Alcohol Coalition. And,
Okay.
And a bunch of professionals, non-professionals, all working together to
Right.
help resolve the problem.
And in partnership with Greenbrier, Gateway, White Deer Run, all the big service providers that we have in this area and in Pittsburgh, I think is a true blessing that we have. So we can get them and address that issue as well. There's a very dated philosophy of domestic violence, and it would say that alcohol plays no role. I would respectfully disagree with that. When you study exactly what happens to your brain when you're drinking and how it affects you and the neurology of alcohol abuse, you realize that abuse is definitely going to happen.
There's some funny drunks and there's some not so funny drunks.
Right. Right.
Interesting enough, on that same mechanism that you're talking about, carbohydrates, sugars in excess do the same thing. And so you have to wonder why, we know our standard American diet is full of that,
Right.
full of sugars. You got to wonder, and other chemicals, you got to wonder if that's causing an increase in some of this.
Right. I could lateral the ball to another program that we do at the Domestic Outreach Center, which is an underage drinking program. We're taping in high school right now. We work with a local judge here. A lot of times when kids get in trouble for drinking underage, they have to go to this weekend educational program that we also do. And a big part of that, because you look at, again, philosophies of what keeps youth from using alcohol, and the scared stiff, this is a picture of the mangled car and the dead bodies, it doesn't work.
No.
It usually, the statistically...
Average day on TV.
Right, and well, they say statistically you'll get that younger person to not drink for 48 hours. What is funny is that I can get a group of people, especially young women, and I can say this is the way your body metabolizes the sugars and the alcohols. And this is what happens and why you gain the freshman 15. And this is why alcohol puts on weight. And it's funny, you can show the picture of the mangled body and they're looking around the room, not paying attention. You talk to a group of young women and you say, this is why alcohol makes you put on weight. I have their attention very quickly. So
Yeah, you always have to know who your audience.
That's right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how does a perpetrator end up in the programs?
Through an arrest. And a lot of times the people will say, if someone is exhibiting domestic abuse, if someone's exhibiting domestic violence, can they just come to our program? And the answer is no. And they would say, why would you turn someone away? Because we find that this can be dangerous for the victim. Because what they'll do is they're not mandated to any long-term program. So they will be abusive, no cops are called, the wife kicks them out of the house, and they say, I want to come back. I want my family back. I'll quit drinking.
Well, yeah, promises are
and
made.
the promises and the promises and the promises. They'll go the first week to our class and say, look what I did. Then he's back at home. Then he'll go to week number 2. No real issues have been addressed, but then he's back at home. Everything's good. And coincidentally, for the next couple weeks, he's got to work late that night, and he never comes back to the classes, and the cycle of abuse will continue. So our program is specifically for people that have been arrested for domestic violence.
So then the court mandates them to enter the program?
Yeah, the court will, the assistant on criminal day here in Peters Township, we will have a representative at Judge Pettit's court. And when Judge Pettit is hearing the cases, there is an assistant district attorney that presides. And they will say one of two things. One, this is getting waived at the court, start the program now. Or in lieu of this getting waived at the court, so it's the carrot dangled that start this program. Because what we found is most of the time the victims of domestic violence don't want to prosecute. Unless this is a very violent, heinous case, but for the most part, they want their family back together.
Yeah, and part of it, I would think, shame enters in. They're ashamed of what happened, and maybe even take some of the blame, and that's probably what
they blame themselves.
Yeah.
And again, if you have a truly abusive person, I always want to say male, but we're not supposed to do that anymore.
Yeah, we're not.
Right. If you truly have an abusive person, who their mindset is going to be to blame them. And the victims of domestic violence, a lot of times they believe that it is their fault. And I've seen this, oh my goodness, countless times. It's more likely to see this than to not see this. When I'm at court and I'm signing this guy up and we're talking to the assistant district attorney, and the victim comes in and says, this is my fault. I was egging him on, and I was drunk too, and I should have just left him alone. And it's literally 9 times out of 10 that you'll have that thought process. And what I have to explain to them in my sales pitch to that victim, through victim advocacy and through the people in the district attorney's office, is it's not your fault. And no one's putting this guy in jail. And no one's trying to punish. At this point, I'm not punishing him. This is something where I'm trying to get help so he's a better father, so he's a better husband, so he doesn't drink, and so he can stop being abusive. And again, we do that through personal accountability. It doesn't matter what she does, how much she drinks, what she said to you, how upset you were, what your boss did to you that day. It's your fault that you were abusive. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of us can learn from that.
Yeah, I think the tendency is always there to blame somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So you're blaming the fact that you did it because you saw it happen in your home as you were growing up. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't really hold true.
I think it's human nature just to blame whenever we mess up.
Yeah, you don't want no one wants to take accountability.
You get pulled over for speeding down the road here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was only 35, or I have a new car. Or we always have excuses when we err.
Yeah,
it's human nature.
Right. So the courts mandate this. Mm-hmm. What happens if they don't show up for the meetings? Or
well, that's the beautiful thing about it. We have a bunch of great district judges around here. Historically, we had great district judges. Jimmy Ellis did a great job with us. Jay Weller over the hill, they both just retired. And now we have Jesse Pettit, and we have a couple other judges coming in. All of our district judges in Washington County retired, and the new group coming in is just a great group of men and women. But they can hold their feet to the fire. This can be you're going to do. The beautiful thing about a program like this is you have to be there. You may not want to be there, but you have to be there. When I see a problem and I see that you are an abusive, look, if you're an abusive person, you don't want to be told you're an abusive person. If this is private counseling, if you're meeting with a psychologist and I said you're an abusive person, you run the risk of them not coming back and you losing your client. I could tell you the things that you don't want to hear, and you have to come back to me next week. That's why this works, because if you don't, we have good judges that can revoke bond. I mean, we can say, look, this is a misdemeanor arrest for an assault. We can waive this up to court of common pleas where you're going to face serious criminal charges. Nobody wants that, but we want to make sure that you're doing these classes. So there is some real weight that we can put on these people.
Is there a certain age group that kind of like shows up more than others?
No, the statistic of domestic violence is people between the age of 20 and 24 are way more likely to be victims of domestic violence. I think it's, when you look at that, I wouldn't like to think, but I would think that a lot of times the victims are even younger. And a weird thing that we're seeing in the state of Pennsylvania is, you brought up elder law. that we're seeing that as people are living longer, and they're in active senior homes or active senior communities, we're actually seeing a little spike in domestic violence in senior citizens.
Elderly against elderly?
Elderly against elderly, yeah.
Wow.
The dating violence that's happening in senior homes, it's way less likely because they take care of that in-house. I'm going to move you further away from him, and that's it. It's like this, almost like a high school lover's quarrel, but when it's reported, we're seeing a little spike there.
Are there areas where it's more concentrated?
No. Domestic violence knows no economic barriers. It knows no race barriers. It's not more relevant, or it's not more relevant in the African American community, or we're having. I could tell you, I go to court everywhere, and the problems we're having for domestic violence up here in Peters Township are the exact same problems we're having in Denora and in Charleroi and in the very rural areas. The rural areas are where it's actually the most dangerous because it's way less likely to be reported. And when, again, you study domestic abuse, and when you study the perpetrators of domestic violence, the power and control, a lot of times what they want to do is to move their spouse away from the city and away from the suburbs, because they have the ability to talk to other women in the neighborhood, and that's threatening to them. So you'll see them living in more rural areas. So although it doesn't have any economic barriers, we're seeing that a lot of times the rural areas are where it's a bigger issue.
So a lot of this abuse stems from the desire to control and have power over somebody else.
That, yes, the way you're raised. We see that there is a lot of people that we're calling this mimicking models of abusive models of conflict resolution, and that's the fancy way of saying I witnessed domestic violence in my house. The funny thing, not funny at all, I'm sorry. The interesting thing of how this started was our executive director, who is my mother, was working in a school. It was called Pathfinder, and she was a special education teacher. And she was working with young adults that had severe anger issues and severe mental health issues. And when you're working with children like that, it's either learning disabilities or behavioral disabilities. And when she was working on her master's degree, she was doing statistical data, and she asked the one question was, are you experiencing domestic violence in your house? Doctor, what do you think? What percentage of those young people said they're experiencing domestic violence? These are the people that are no longer mainstream, that are in a specialized school because of their anger issues. So what percentage would you say?
I would say they're probably experiencing it.
Huh?
Maybe they don't realize that they are so much. That would be my take. I would be fearful to guess a percentage.
It was 100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100% of those children said that they were experiencing some form of domestic abuse, some sort of domestic violence in their house. So right there, they knew that they truly want to help children and families. You got to make sure that you're working with the perpetrators of this, which is the violent people.
Wow. And on a day-to-day basis, you don't think about it.
You don't.
You know, your experience, give us just a brief synopsis on how this center was founded, began.
Well, it was exactly that. It was my mother who started everything. And she said that she wanted to, when she was working with, again, young adults who had anger issues and were being abusive, she was doing her statistical analysis through her master's program, and it was that they were all experiencing domestic violence.
And we're talking how many years ago?
Oh, mid-90s. Okay. Mid-90s, yeah. I was in high school, and she was always like, this is fascinating, and talking to me about this, and I thought, this is nothing that I want to get involved in ever. It's funny how life has a way of working things out. So she then left teaching at high schools. She was a special education teacher, and she said, I want to work with domestic violence, and I want to work with perpetrators of domestic violence. She worked with a program in Pittsburgh. She liked it in theory, but was saying, we could do so much better for so many different reasons. She started her own program. That was in, I want to say in 1998. She was doing great. Then what happened was she actually got diagnosed with breast cancer. And this is always an interesting thing for me, because not only is October Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So this is like, it means a lot to me when talking about my mother. And my sister was starting to be a principal, and she said, I'm going to take a sabbatical, and while mom's getting this treatment, I'm going to run the program. We can't let what our mother worked so hard to do
fall the wayside.
Fall the wayside. Well, great news. My mother has been in remission for many, many years. She's healthy and feisty as ever. And when that was happening, though, my sister was like, look, I can't run day-to-day operations. I need someone to go meet with the judges, the DAs, the assistant DAs. We need a salesman. And at the time, I was working for a member of Congress, and I said, all right, well, I'll take a break and I'll do day-to-day. I said, I'll give you 5 months.
And how many years? How many years?
That's 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
Yeah, so 16 years ago, I told my sick mother and my sister that I would give them 5 months, and it's just been amazing, the people that we helped, and I can't go to the grocery store without someone coming back up to me and saying, hey, do you remember me, and you help. One of the most special things was there was a young family, and he was a veteran, and his family was going by the wayside. And it was very special to me because I knew of the family, and then I was at a community function with my family, and he came up to me and just said,
That's your reward.
Yeah, he said, you saved my family. We're together, we're married, things are going well.
We're running at the end of the show. This was a quick show,
Yes.
so much information. I just want to tell everybody that actually kind of interesting that you're running for county commissioner because you know the county.
I do know the county. I know the county, and I know what we're doing right, which is a lot. Everyone's vilifying me. You always say we're doing wrong. I think we're doing some great things here in Washington County.
Yeah, I think we are too.
I do, and this is about me taking
and
my.
we need people like you running the show. You've aligned yourself with Diana Irie Vaughn.
Correct. Yes, Diana Irie Vaughn and I are running mates.
Awesome. She always has my signature of approval
Good,
there,
good.
And I would grant that to you as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Good luck on your campaign here for county commissioner. Get out and vote. Hey, remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're happy as well. We'll talk to you next time on Healthy Pets, Healthy Owners. Remember, you can listen to me live on Healthy Pets, Healthy People, AM 1250 The Answer, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. In fact, Nick is going to be on, what's that date, Nick? The
23rd, maybe.
20, somewhere around the 20 that weekend.
23rd-ish.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks,
you.
everybody.